Hi students, I just wanted to share this with you today and make sure you're aware of it. It's up on Blackboard in the summary and strong response folder under how to says, and does statements into a summary in order to help you write your summary. So I wanted to point out a couple of details about summaries to make sure you guys get these. This is an example of a summary of an article by Ellen Goodman called Family Counterculture. There's a link to the article there. Basically, it's got a summary of it. I wanted to point out a couple things in the summary, first of all. In looking at the summary, you'll notice the first sentence is, in family counterculture is in quotation marks. Whenever you have an article or a short piece of writing, you should always put the title in quotation marks. You would use italics for longer works, such as a book. So you want to start in the name of the article, comma, the first and last name of the author. You want to use the author's last name in every single sentence throughout the summary because you're using their work, and basically the ideas in the summary should not be your own. Your own thoughts and ideas should not be in the summary at all. So if you have an opinion about the article, you want to keep it out of the summary, even if it's an opinion about the writing quality. So for instance, you wouldn't want to say anything like, this was a really interesting article. That should not be included in the summary. You want to keep it completely objective, just reporting what they say. So in this case, you want to do what's called tagging throughout. Tagging is giving credit to an author by mentioning their name within the sentence in which you're using their work, their ideas. You'll also notice that the only quotation marks are on family counterculture. That's because the summary should be in your own words. Anything the writer says, you should be able to say in fewer words. That's kind of the point of a summary, is to make it short and sweet, quick and to the point. So, whereas she has a lot more in her essay, this is just a very brief paragraph. And part of the reason for says and does statements is a lot of times you've got more paragraphs than you do sentences in a summary. In a newspaper, the average paragraph is only 2 sentences because 2 sentences is considered the attention span for the average American. So in magazines go towards a more educated audience because typically magazines are more expensive, so people have to have more money to buy them, which means a better job, which typically means more education. They tend to be a bit longer. And one of the articles you guys are reading was in a magazine. The other article was a chapter in a book. So they tend to have longer paragraphs, but they've still got multiple paragraphs within them. One has 12 and the other has 24. What's below that summary is a paragraph with just these says statements, and it doesn't really make any sense. It's choppy, it's got a lot of problems. That's where the does statements come in. Does statements should describe what the function of the paragraph is in the essay. What's it doing? Is it summarizing? Is it stating a new idea? Is it describing a problem? Stating the thesis or the main idea for it? Is it giving evidence? Those would be the types of things you might see in a does statement. Does statements help do what's called chunking. Chunking is when you look at a group of paragraphs and connect them together and block them together. For the essays you guys are reading, they tend to be fairly traditionally organized in terms of paragraphs about the same topic or grouped together. But that's not always the case. Does statements come in real handy when you've got a paragraph, an essay, where a topic might be talked about in paragraphs 1, 3, 4, 7, and 15. So those different paragraphs in different parts of the essay, when it comes time to summarize that topic, you have to look at lots of different paragraphs. Does statements help you to see which paragraphs are connected, and therefore you can move them together, take the says statements, summarize them into one says statement or maybe 2 says statements for those 4 or 5 paragraphs in order to put into your summary. And that will help you cut down and make it more concise. And we'll look at an example of how to do that in just a second. So below that it has says and does statements for all of the paragraphs in her essay. And some of these I made some notes on just kind of how I would think about these when I'm writing a summary. So this says does, grabs audience's attention, establishes the audience's parents. In a summary, I don't have room to grab the reader's attention. The idea behind a summary is if someone doesn't have time to read something longer, they're going to read something very short. So you don't need to spend any time grabbing their attention because you have their attention, but only for a very short time. That means you don't want to waste any words, so I can just cut this out. I can completely ignore this paragraph now that I know that that's the does statement for it. The next one states the essay's main argument. Main argument is basically the thesis statement. I know that's going to be very important and should be included. This is a weird essay where it's only part of the thesis statement. The thesis statement spread out over 4 different paragraphs, and we'll look at combining those below. Some of the other ones, for instance, let's see, paragraph 3 here. The says statement is a lot of details. It's basically just evidence. So what I need is not that paragraph, but I'll need a paragraph where the says statement is the idea that that's evidence of, which is basically one about advertising. So that might mean that I need to find a paragraph which has that as a says statement, or if not, I could take other says statements about advertising and come up with a says statement of my own, which basically looks at the idea those are trying to get across. And the next one continues discussion of advertising from the last paragraph. So this is paragraph 4 is something I would want to combine with paragraph 3. Paragraph 5 is starting to transition to the role of parents, but it's again talking about how the media looks at the role of advertising. So again, that's going to be related. And then it talks about the role of parents in paragraph 6 after transitioning to it in paragraph 5. Paragraph 7 talks about how parents need to do more, or how people say parents need to do more, even though the media is becoming a bigger problem. So again, that's continuing on the role of parent. So I can connect paragraphs 5, 6, and 7. So that just is kind of an idea of things you might do as you're looking through it. Think about the paragraphs that are related to each other. And the does statements help a lot with that. So I'm going to kind of scroll down to this here. So paragraphs 2, 11, 14, and 17 all deal with basically kind of the thesis statement. So what I'm going to do, it says states the essay's main argument, restates thesis here on 11. On 14, it says restates thesis. On 17, restates thesis. I'm going to go ahead and delete those does statements in the paragraph numbers. So now I've got is the says statements. And then I'm going to try to combine those. So I've got these says statements now. One says parents are responsible for debunking messages sent to kids by the media. And this says media has more influence in children's lives than parents. So I'm going to try to combine those into one sentence, getting both those ideas across. Even though media has more influence in children's lives than parents, parents are expected to debunk or argue against messages sent to kids by the media. So now I've got those two sentences combined into one. Now it says parents used to be expected to instill values in their children, but times have changed. So the media has more influence. So maybe today the media plays a bigger role than parents in teaching children values. Yet parents are still expected to debunk any counter any bad values taught to kids by the media. That makes it a little clearer. So now I've got that one in there. Yet parents have a challenging time Okay. This is challenging because parents often must unteach the values the media has instilled. So that's kind of taking those four statements and combining them into one. Below it, you'll see this is the one that's actually in the summary. In Family Counterculture, Ellen Goodman argues that the media has too big of an effect on children's lives, making it harder for parents to raise them. Both of those sentences are basically saying the same thing. According to Ellen Goodman's Family Counterculture, so there's kind of an example. Now it looks like it's ready to go into a summary as the first sentence. And that's kind of how you would take those sentences and combine them and to make a summary. It's just another kind of example of how that might look. I've got these paragraphs 12 and 13. This provides evidence of the growing strength of media and how it's stronger than parents, and how parents are fighting for their child's heart and mind. When it comes to the summary above at the top, this is all that was left of that, contributing to the breakdown of the family unit. So it's part of an idea, part of a sentence in the summary. And it just kind of gives an idea of how to break that down. I hope you found this useful. If you did not do says and does statements, try to chunk the essay by looking at the paragraph's topic sentences and finding paragraphs that work together. Thank you.